All right, well, good evening. Welcome to our school board meeting for Grants Pass School District number 7. We'd like to welcome all those who are attending on Zoom and also all of our board members and administrators here. We will open with the Pledge of Allegiance. If you would all please stand and join me in reciting them. You can see the words, but we're going to get through this. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Sure. Could I just remind everyone to speak loudly and clearly for the people out there because we have audio issues?
Yep. We are just on that note, just talking with Todd, we're going to invest some money into this, use some COVID relief dollars because the last 4-hour meeting that I did at home, I got the user experience too. So anyway.
Tried to tell you.
Loud and clear. Now, loud and clear in person. Right?
Quiet and muffled.
All right, well, item 2.0 on our agenda this evening is communications. Superintendent Kolb, I understand we do not have any written communications.
No additional written communication.
I'd like to remind all of those who are joining us on Zoom that if there's any request to speak, you may put that in the chat box and we will address those items as they come up on the agenda. Moving on to number 3.0, our consent agenda. We will entertain a motion to approve our agenda for this evening, as well as our board draft minutes from our meeting on April 13th.
Member DeLaGrange moves to approve tonight's board agenda and the board minutes of April 13th.
Thank you.
Cliff, second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Tanya, may we have a roll call vote, please?
Member DeLaGrange,
Yes.
Member Durbin,
Yes.
Member Brownell,
Yes.
Board Chair Nelson,
Yes.
Member Coleman,
Yes.
Member Wilkins,
Yes.
Member Richardson.
Yes.
Thank you. All right, 4.0 reports. We have staff reports tonight. It looks like Director Zatola has a report on our English OBEEL. Is that English language?
English learners.
English learners.
Thank you.
Yeah, so this is an annual report. I'm assuming you have it there in your packet. Up on the screen is the Spanish version, and hopefully you have an English version in front of you. So this is an annual report that's required by ODE for us to present to the board each year and to have posted on our website. One of the interesting things about this report is that it is always 2 years previous data. So you'll note that this year's report is with 18-19 school year data. So that's always been a little bit interesting as we're trying to, make decisions and look at information and have it inform us for going forward. Luckily, we have this data at our fingertips all the time. For us, that is more up to date, but this is how the state does it for the required report. So I know that you've had it and had a chance to look at it. So I just was going to open it up for any questions you may have.
All right, I think you've left them all speechless.
I will point out that for 2 years ago, or for the 18-19 data that's on here, I was looking, some of the things that I would draw your attention to is our discipline data for our students who are identified EL is below state average, which is what you would want it to be. You would want it to be below that. Our attendance is higher than state averages, which is again what we would want it to be. Our percent of ELs who are meeting the standards in their particular test, it's called the ELPA, which is the annually required test for all students who are identified EL, and we're exceeding state averages in those. So that's all good news.
I have a couple questions, just this member Durbin. I have an assumption, so I just want to ask to make sure if my assumption's correct or not. The couple data points I was looking at was section 13 for the ELLs who receive sped services.
Yep.
If when I'm comparing the right column to the left column, is that our previous 2-year report was at 9% and now we're at 22%?
No, it's different groups. So the first column on the left is the percent of current ELs. So when it says current ELs and former ELs, those are two different groups of students.
Okay, but previously our previous group of ELLs were 9% of those were receiving sped services, and now we're at 22%, or the not now, but the 2-year period.
2 years ago, yes. And you
Okay.
can see that it's changed for the state as well.
Yep, exactly. And then on the graduation, 5-year cohort graduation, that looks like a similar trend with the state, but again, just making sure. So the previous group of ELLs, we were at 80% 5-year cohort, and now the current ELLs is at 60.
So, and just I should define, so former means that they exited out of the program. So they're all still ELs, but current means they're currently receiving services, they're active ELs. And former ELs means they exited out of the program based on the scores that they got on the ELPA. Does that make sense?
Yep, that's better. Thank you.
So I do think it's interesting to note when you look at achievement standards for math and English language arts that we are outperforming the state average. However, when you get down to the 5-year cohort rate, we're slightly lower. So I think that's kind of interesting. We're achieving, but we're not getting them across the line.
Yeah.
Well, but the only way you know if that correlates is if you go back and look at the data for the ones that would graduate and how we did compared to the state back then. It's time shifted. So assuming our current numbers, we're doing better than the state, at least for our 6th to 8th graders, I'd expect in 4 years, we should be being better than the state on graduation. But it's time shifted. You can't tell that from here.
Even though this is the required report to present to the board, it's, as we know, anything that's 2 years ago, filled with 2 years ago data, it's not the best presentation for making decisions or making predictions.
Keep us on our
Thank you, Susan.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you. Next,
I'm
yes,
sorry, can I have, do you know,
speak up, Debbie. Take your mask off. It's okay.
do you know, looking at section 24 ELLs with discipline incidents, do you know if that number went up from 17, 18 to compared with these 18, 19 numbers?
You're muted, Director Zitola.
I do not remember that. I would have to look that up.
Okay. I know we can't be in the present, I was just looking from the past to the even more past.
I do know that generically, again, because I'm not looking at the data right in front of me, but it is something that we look at every year. And it's something that we have presented to our TIDE group, our community parent group. And so we are always looking at that subpopulation when we're analyzing our PBIS data and our discipline data. And that is one area that has consistently been not necessarily below state average. That's the part that I don't have my fingers on right now, but it has been consistently been proportional to the number of students who are in that group. So it's not, our kids who are identified EL have never been had more discipline incidents proportionately or percentage wise than their counterparts. Does that make sense? That's comparing our own data to ourselves, not to the state.
Yeah, that's helpful, and I know we usually get that report once a year also, and
Right.
I'm just more aware of it these days, so
Right.
thank you for that information.
Okay, thank you. Next up is our 5x5 flex block schedule with Principal Sell, who is obviously wearing a snazzy bow tie to woo the board with his appearance, so thank you. Principal Sell, we'll turn the time over to you.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. We had Spirit Weeks a few weeks ago, and one of them was Fancy Dress Up Day. And I wore a bow tie and liked it so much that I thought that I'd incorporate it into my wardrobe. So I'm digging it. Have a quick presentation for us. Director Evans said that I get 3 minutes this evening, so I will use my 20 minutes judiciously as we get moving. So want to present to the school board what the South Middle School staff has been talking about, really specifically the last few months, but also bring the board up to speed with where we've been as a staff and as a school, both at North and South the past couple years. So I want to get into where we've been the last few years. What are we doing to address different issues with what we are as a middle school? And really that question of, are we an extension of the elementary level or are we a precursor getting students ready for high school? And our conversations with our staff is a resounding yes, we're both of those. And we know that middle school is a difficult place to be as a student, as a teacher, as a parent. It is just it's a really unique time in life. And so what have we been doing to address different issues that we've found in our middle school? At least in the fall of 2018, when Mr. Blanchard and I more purposefully and targeted starting to look at some of these issues, we started to do some staff surveys with our 6th grade teachers and then with all staff as well. We purposefully started to look more and more at data and content review and analysis, always looking at state assessment data. With the Oregon RTI grant that we had, starting to look at our math benchmark testing, in addition to smarter balance tests, and also our reading inventory data, newly implemented just a couple of years ago. Also this last June, asked our teachers to purposely look, knowing that school would look a little bit different this year. What are the essential learnings and essential standards that students would need to be learning during a comprehensive distance learning time if we had a school year that kind of looked like this year? We've read a lot the last few years and really the last few months, research literature on middle school best practices. We've also had committees formed, and visioning began kind of at the charge of Superintendent Kolb of our middle schools struggle. We need vision for our middle schools. And we want Mr. Blanchard and Mr. Sale, you guys to lead your teams at your respective schools with redesign committees for what do middle schools and what should they look like here in D7. So committees formed and visioning began. We've gone on a number of school visits with Avid being new to the district the last 5 years and to the middle school the last 3 years. A lot of school visits with Avid demonstration schools. Last year, our schedule redesign committee decided to look at an advisory period, thinking that we were going to be in our traditional schedule for this coming year, and started interest-based collaboration with the association. And then finally, also looking at parent surveys and student surveys with our Youth Truth survey that we've done at both middle schools and the high school the past few years. And so coming before you today on behalf of South Middle School and the Schedule Redesign Committee, I think Dr. Bloomquist, the last bullet point on there with the schedule recommendation that was voted on by our staff. When we started to meet a couple years ago and really purposefully in January, December, January this year, we asked ourselves the question, will the schedules that we look at and start to explore align with our mission and vision, both within District 7 and specifically at South Middle School. And we are preparing graduates in District 7 that are responsible, productive citizens, and more specifically at the building level, a community here at South Middle School dedicated to learning and promoting dignity and respect, integrity and respect. And so that was kind of our framework for the literature that we jumped into. We had a lot of guiding resources that we went to and looked at. Todd, that's the next slide. Some resources that we pulled from, obviously our work with Avid. Superintendent Kolb gave us some literature from Virginia Commonwealth University and their School of Education, and then some other publications and some books as well. One of the primary ones that we did look at, and Dr. Bloomquist, it's that next slide, is the AMLE, the Association of Mid-Level Educators, and they have done research the past 40, 50 years on what makes a really successful middle school. And in 2011, it's kind of the blue box right there, they came up with essential attributes for what effective middle schools in America look like. They're developmentally responsive, they're challenging for students, they point students to be empowered, and they were equitable places. In 2019, they came up with a revised version of that that still had those 4 characteristics, and then added a 5th one that really effective middle schools are engaging, fostering a learning environment and atmosphere that's relevant, participatory for students in their education, and motivating for all learners. We also looked at the National Forum, the Schools to Watch. It's a list of schools in America that they study, and they look at their instructional practices, their systems, which include schedules and a variety of factors which comprise really effective schools, which is why they're schools to watch. And so those were our guiding resources as we started to look at what a new schedule could look like for us in D7. We asked ourselves what's going well, what are areas for improvement, both at the middle school level and areas for improvement district-wide. And our staff is phenomenal, had a lot of things that we are doing well that we indicated, and really having that question in the back of our minds, could a schedule shift and a change in what we do be a catalyst for all the good things that we are doing? Some really specific areas for improvement that we found at the middle school level, we want to see, and I think our school board has mentioned this, and I know our district director team has made comments about this, fewer discipline issues in the classroom. Our team specifically at South, we look at there's so many transitions, especially for a 5th grade student transitioning to 6th grade. A 5th grader typically has just 1 teacher, and if they elect to be in a strings or band program, they will see a 2nd teacher, and then they'll see their PE teacher a few times a week as well. So at the most, students in 5th grade are seeing 3 different teachers. Typically for most of our students, and then they get to 6th grade and they see 7 different teachers, and that's 7 different classrooms and just a lot of transitions. Our teachers said that lessons oftentimes feel rushed, and that comment that one of them made, we're trying to do too much within a period that's only about 40, 45 minutes long with practices that we know are instructionally sound. We've heard a lot before that our students don't have much choice, especially if you are not a music kid, if you're not participating in band or orchestra or choir, there's not much choice in electives. And just generally, our teachers need more time to teach. We know that when we send students off to the high school level, a lot of them are in need of remediation and a pared down math class at the 9th grade level. And so we have a desire for our kids to be algebra ready. We want students to engage in science, technology, engineering skills in more of a hands-on lab-based approach, and really specifically looking at our target populations. And one of the reasons that South Middle School was put on a few years ago, a targeted school for improvement, our SPED population and our ELL population. So our students that have the largest barriers in their educational career, we're not typically doing a great job with. And we know that they don't typically have equitable access electives choices if they are being served in intervention classes. And then just the overall area of improvement, wanting students to engage in content using critical thinking, inquiry, and collaboration skills. So that was kind of the framework for areas for improvement, both at the middle school and district-wide where we see going. We also asked ourselves, if we got to build a middle school from the ground up, what would be on that wish list for a brand new school? Teachers said that they wanted an increased opportunity to build stronger relationships with the kids in their class. Secondly, wanted an increased opportunity for teacher collaboration, working amongst and with each other. Thirdly, stronger content opportunities for students, specifically in math and language arts, where our scores at South are below state level. Also at North, a little bit below state level as well. But looking really as a statewide whole, our math scores statewide are not great. And so wanting stronger content opportunities specifically for math, for reading, writing, and math skills. And then an increased enrichment or exploration, elective opportunity and access opportunity for each student. So that was kind of our wish list for what we wanted. We're going to wind back to what our traditional schedule was, and what you see on the screen and in your packet is a traditional schedule for a student on the left-hand side up on the screen, and then on the right-hand side of the screen, taking kind of an average, and this is with no late starts added in, and it's 48-minute periods that we have in a traditional schedule, multiplied by 7 classes in a day, multiplied by the number of contact days that we have with students that they're on campus. So the total instructional minutes, there's 966 hours when you do that. And for each of our content areas, you see there's unless it's just one semester long elective, 138 hours given to math, to language arts, to a year-long elective. And one of the things that our schedule committee talked about was, man, some of our kids were passing on to the high school and they get 138 hours a year for math, but their 2 electives are 2 band classes. And it's no knock on band. We have some amazing music programs, but I consider it a shame if, as a principal of a school, we are doubling kids up in something that is awesome and keeping them engaged in school, but we're passing them off being math deficient. One thing that really stood out to our team, it's the box on the far right-hand side, is that with the 7 or 8 transitions that students have within the day, when you multiply that over the course of a year, our students are in the hallway almost 92 hours in the school year. There you go. They are getting more time in the hallway than they are with the semester-long elective. And that, we said, is pretty crazy. Also knowing that our students coming from 5th to 6th grade have a lot of transitions. So again, as we transition to the next slide, we have kind of our wish list of what we wanted: stronger relationships, teacher collaboration, stronger content opportunities, and then enrichment and access for students. The proposed schedule that you have before you in your packet is something called a 5x5 flex or block schedule, where there is an intentional focus on reading, writing, and math skills, and where we prioritize that on paper with a schedule. I'll kind of walk through what that looks like. And so on the left-hand side, it is semester 1, and there's an A day and a B day. Right now in our CDL and in our hybrid schedule, our students are used to that, an A day and a B day. Our teachers are used to that right now. So your A day, you would see periods 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. You'd see your math teacher, your language arts teacher, social studies teacher. You'd have PE on A days, and then you would have an elective. On B days, you'd still get 72 minutes of math, 72 minutes of language arts. You'd see your social studies teacher again, and then you'd have another elective, and then another elective. This is an example 8th grade schedule that we would have. Semester 2, you'd still have 72 minutes of math and language arts every day, but instead of social studies, you'd have your science class, where we would address all the standards for 6th, 7th, or 8th grade in that semester. You'd have PE for the full year, but it's every other day. And again, this is for our 8th graders. And then sufficient elective choices. For our support classes, those would also be 72 minutes every other day for a full year or a semester based on the support or intervention that they need. Elective classes in this model are 72-minute classes every other day. And we have an increased amount of elective opportunities that we'd be able to offer this next year that we'll get into in just a little bit. With the proposed schedule, Dr. Bloomquist, if you flip to the next slide, what we find is that there is more of a focus, obviously, on math and language arts skills, 2 of our focus areas that we have at South and also district-wide, that in comparison of 138 hours of seat time or butts in the seat time, it would increase that to 207 hours. Again, this is 72 minutes multiplied by 5 periods within a day, and then multiplied by the number of days that we see students. For our science and social studies classes, there's a little bit of trepidation right at the forefront that we go, oh my gosh, those are being reduced from a full year to a semester. So we only get 50% of the actual instructional time. When you work it out with those longer periods over the course of a semester, seeing students every day, it works out to just a little bit above 75% of the traditional time. Some of our conversations about that, knowing that that is a concern for us, only getting 75% of the actual instructional time. We know that there's an increased focus on math and language arts, and we asked ourselves the question, is that 75% of longer class periods over the course of a semester, is that better than 100% of the traditional time that we get in a fragmented day? What struck us is that time in the hallway that students have is drastically cut down from 92 hours to 46 hours over the course of a year, and that feels better. Kids are in classrooms more instead of in the hallways. And again, the seat time compared to a traditional 48-minute period, 966 hours in a traditional block versus 1,035 hours. So our kids are learning more, they're in the classroom more. There's some advantages to block scheduling and then some problems and solutions that we've been developing the last couple months as we've kind of gravitated toward this. So advantages to a block or flex schedule that we came away with and where our staff said, I feel very comfortable moving into this for this next year. Provides more time and opportunity to access core content. We know that our kids at South and district-wide at the middle school level are math deficient with their math skills, especially coming out of a pandemic and pandemic learning that we're in. And we know that based on the year, we kind of fluctuate right at state level, above, a little bit below, but we know that we can do better with our students' reading and writing scores. It helps us get a little bit closer to what true middle schools are, as defined by the Association of Mid-Level Educators. Teachers see fewer students during a day, giving them more time for individualized instruction. There's less transitions in the day for kids, resulting in a calmer feeling and less opportunity for discipline issues. A lot of our discipline issues at the middle school level start in the hallway, and they either start and end in the hallway, or they start and they end in the classroom. And so a kid or a teacher gets a dysregulated kiddo within their classroom, and they don't even know what's up. And then we end up passing that student on and on. It's a pretty good in-between schedule from elementary to the high school, and it can help with those grade level transitions. With the increased class time, specifically for our social studies and science classes that get the 75% of the seat time compared to a normal year, there are a lot of opportunities for cooperative learning, for tech purposes and integration of technology. Project-based learning and lab activities can be incorporated to those longer periods. Students have more time for reflection and less information to process over the course of a day. Instead of 7 different teachers and 7 different content areas, there's only 5. Students would have up to 3 elective options each semester by the time that they're in 8th grade. And for students in support classes or intervention classes, they now have adequate choices for their electives as well. Teachers go from a 48-minute period to a 78-minute prep planning time. That is cooperative with their team teachers. And so they would be able to, with the 120 students or so that they have on their teacher workload or their rosters, they share that with 2 other core content teachers. So they're all talking about the same kids. Teachers can be configured into those teams that I was talking about for collaboration and integration of curriculum. Then there's increased elective and exploration opportunities for kids as well. And the next slide talks about this. One of the main things that we've heard from our student investment account listening forums the last couple of years that Director Evans and Zatola and our director team has talked about is that at the middle school level, there's just not a lot of elective opportunities for students. One of the big things that we took away from the research that we were reading about successful middle schools is that there is exploration opportunities for students. And as great as our high schools are with 7 programs of study within the CTE department and a lot of offerings for students, we've not been able to have that at the middle school level. And so we're super excited to be able to increase our elective opportunities with students, both with some potential student investment account monies and then just a reallocation of our FTE. So family consumer science, STEM electives, a Spanish language elective, some PE electives, an intro to leadership, creative writing, current events, speech and debate class, yearbook, all possibilities of what could be offered this next year. And then some work with our art teacher and our computers teacher in revamping those classes to add to that list of elective opportunities for students. And that list up on the screen just gets me really excited for what our students could explore at the middle school level. We've not had that at South really in a systemic way to be able to offer that amount of elective opportunities, which is pretty exciting. If I were a kid, that looks like a school that I'd want to be at. The last few slides are also one of the last pages in your board packet to talk about what that 6th grade would look like. So again, your math and language arts you would have for 72 minutes every day for a full year. Your social studies and science classes, 72 minutes every day for a semester. At the 6th grade level, we know that they're wiggly bodies and they need to be moving around. And so we'd be able to offer them PE for a full year every day. And then developmentally, not giving 6th graders a ton of elective choices, but still an offering of, if they're a music student, to opt into that, to take their health class that's required with our standards, one semester, and then another elective opportunity the other semester. As you move into 7th grade, there's still math and language arts, 72 minutes every day for a full year, social studies science every day for a semester. PE moves from one day or 72 minutes every other day for a full year. Our careers class and our health class, you'd take one of those one semester, the other semester, and then an increased amount of elective opportunities for students at the 7th grade level. Where it gets pretty fun for our kids is at the 8th grade level, math and language arts, again, every day for 72 minutes for a full year. Social studies and science every day for a semester, incorporating our health into our PE classes every other day for a full year, and then that 8th grade level increased opportunities for our students as they head into high school with those increased elective opportunities. As I said before, there's some challenges to this schedule and some solutions that we've been working with as a building level team, as a district director team, and more importantly, our teachers at South getting behind this because they're the ones that are going to be doing a lot of the heavy lifting. One of those big heavy lifts is that I move from a teacher teaching for 48-minute periods to 72-minute periods. And so the solution for that, starting this spring, professional development that's targeted. That's one of the things that the teachers really said that they wanted. If we're going to move forward with this schedule, we need to feel really comfortable and prepared and confident, knowing that we're going to be learning a lot this next year about what it's like to be teaching in a 72-minute period. We need some PD. The elective option, especially for our music electives and some challenges with electives there. There's an increased elective options, which exposes kids to the programs of study at the high school. And the district is committed to providing support through curriculum time to be able to make those adjustments. And those are some steps that we're going to be taking here in the next few weeks and months. And then lastly, what about music? Is that time reduced for music? And why not PE every day for all of our students? With our new schedule, especially at the 7th and 8th grade level, if a student elects to be part of 2 music classes, they actually get, or their music minutes actually increase. And so if they're truly a student that wants 2 band classes, or by the time they're an 8th grader, 2 band classes and an orchestra class, they're able to do that. We get really excited for those students that we're only able to offer 2 electives currently within our schedule that go, man, I want to take AVID and band and this other full year long elective. And they're kind of limited in those regards. For PE, PE at 6th grade would be year long, and we're always encouraging students to go out for extracurricular activities and athletics and events, and there's more opportunities for that at the 7th and 8th grade level. So some solutions that we've thought of so far. Our next steps, before I turn it back over to you and see if you have any questions. Next steps in our process, we have a school parent meeting next Thursday. It'll be a virtual one to kind of go through exactly what I gave to you as the school board tonight. It will be recorded for families that are not able to make it and want some info on that. needing your kind of vote of confidence. And I know Superintendent Kolb has kind of dropped a little bit of info into your ears so that this is hopefully not the first time that you've been hearing about this. Needing your kind of blessing with this as well, because it is a pretty drastic shift for what our middle schools here at South will be going through. As a district, working with union leadership on any contract issues, and we were really careful through this process involving Kirk and Danny and Trish in this process as well. Working with staffing allocations for scheduling like we usually do in the springtime. Going to continue to collaborate on building elective programs that purposefully feed into what is existing at the high school level already. Part of any spring at any school is forecasting at the secondary level, so we'll continue to do that. And kind of our building piece, develop Power School schedule frameworks within Power Scheduler. And then, like I mentioned before, something that our teacher teams really want is that continued professional development. And those are our next steps. Mr. Lango, one of our assistant principals, put it really, really well. He said, when I went through North Middle School, I think the schedule that I was on in the 80s looks pretty familiar and similar to what we currently are at both North and South. And if we're expecting to find different results and expecting different results, I don't know that we're going to do that if we're in a very similar schedule and framework in 2021, especially coming out of pandemic learning, if we're on a very similar schedule that we were in the 1980s. And I think it was Einstein that said, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. And so we know as a school that we need to do something different and focus on some of those areas while increasing opportunities for our kids. So that's kind of our process the last few months and years at South Middle School in moving toward a new schedule. I'll open it up to any questions and probably deflect a lot of those to Trish because she's a lot smarter than I am.
I have a question, Barrett. I see that Wednesday late start is gone. How does that affect teachers and their prep periods?
Yeah, Wednesday late start would actually still be in there on the first page that you have in your board packet. Students still have a late start Wednesday and teachers still have a late start Wednesday so that we can do some of those building specific professional development opportunities working within our content area teams. So those 72-minute periods, you reduce that by an hour. On Wednesdays, actually go to 60-minute periods. In a traditional school year, it's a 48-minute period on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. And then Wednesday periods go down to something like 36, 37-minute periods. So there's still a late start Wednesday for students in this schedule.
I see that. I was looking at the comparison. So, thank you.
If I could just tack on to Cassie's question, I have a question about the AB schedule and how that works with, odd number of days in the week with the Wednesday.
Yeah, with current middle schools and high schools that do have an AB rotating schedule or a day 1, day 2 schedule. So 1 week you would have your A-day classes. So in this model, it would be periods 1 through 5 on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And then you'd have your B-day classes, periods 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 on Tuesday and Thursday. The following week, you just go in an AB rotation. And so the following week, you'd start your week on your B-day classes because the preceding week on Friday, you ended the week on your A-day classes. So that following week, you'd be BA, so that over the course of 2 weeks, you see all of your students five times. Unless in this model, you're a math or language arts teacher, you see all of your students 10 times within that 2-week framework.
Very good, thanks.
On the 5th Tuesday, you just wait till your kids in the middle school. They get us to keep them on their toes.
They fly a big flag.
And
Barrett, does this change do anything for class sizes? Do the class sizes stay the same? As we're shrinking the number of classes from 7 to 5. I know we're expending the time, but does that do anything for the number of classrooms that your junior high needs to accommodate all the students? And does this affect the class sizes in any way?
Yeah, that was one of the main things that we looked at, and it was one of the main things that Danny and Kirk and Trish said, hey, what's this going to do? So a different way to look at it, instead of reducing the number of classes from 7 to 5, it's actually an increase of 7 to 10 sections over the course of 2 days. And so it increases the amount of sections that we have for students to fall into. So with that, it creates a little bit more flexibility with student schedules, with what they're able to take, that there's actually 10 periods within the day instead of 5 periods. The student, I think the technical term for it, and Kurt can correct me, it's the teacher optimum load, is 180 students with our current collective bargaining agreement. With our class sizes, we always try to keep those between 25 and 30 students. A lot of the research says that class sizes at the junior high level, perfect class sizes are between 26 and 33 students. If you say 33 students to any teacher, they want to curse at you. But research has said that it's 26 to 33 students. We're building our schedules right now that class sizes would be on the higher end, 30 students for our math, language arts, and then our social studies and science classes. If you multiply that over 4 periods in a day that you see the same students, it's at the most 120 student contacts that you have, which is well below the 180 optimum workload. Where it gets a little tricky is our elective classes, where now you're teaching 8 of the 10 periods. And if you divide 180 divided by 8 sections that you can teach, it's an average class size of 22 and a half kids. And so wanting to build all of our electives at about 20 kids. And so able to do that. And we are finishing up our seat calculator that Superintendent Kolb has asked us to do. Can we actually do that with the amount of staffing that we have? Because we don't want to commit to this and then have you come back and say, we need 15 extra teachers to make this work. We're able to make it work is what we're finding. And those elective class sizes, smaller than usually what they are in a traditional model.
With the additional allocations that come from student investment account, with the priority being more electives in middle school. And so with additional allocations we said last year, we were going to hire more teachers this year to support it. We didn't necessarily do that because of COVID. As presented, we intend to move forward with that, and postings have been.
Do we have class space?
Yes, with the additional classrooms that we've added, we're filling those with the teachers.
So the list of electives that we have here, what are we certain that all of those will be available, or is this just our wish list?
So in your packet, the ones that are in blue, those are the family consumer science classes. Currently, all of our 7th graders either took that kind of level 1 in a distance learning hybrid format with Ryan Clark. We were able to offer that at the semester. And so the one in blue is something as of 2nd semester that we're already offering. The ones in green in your board packet, so the STEM elective class, and then the Spanish, those are ones with the student investment accounts that we would love to fill. We already have a couple applicants for our Spanish teacher position, which is super exciting. And then looking for, I think everybody's looking for math teachers right now, but looking for that. The ones in yellow, the electives in yellow, with the kind of reclassification of our FTE count, those are ones with the existing sections that we're able to add. Not all of those, but most of those would be able to be offered. And so having conversations with teachers right now of you have 4 sections that are open. Would you want to teach a creative writing class, or would you want to teach a speech and debate class? And having those conversations with some different teachers whose schedules allow that within their assignment for next year. Wanting teachers to have a lot of voice and say into that, because I think just humans, if I have voice and choice in this, I'm going to be a lot more excited to teach that than if you just tell me you're teaching this human anatomy and physiology class. I don't have any passion for that, and I don't really want to teach that. And so those are kind of the list of what we're probably going to be able to offer. Maybe not a yearbook class. I would like to pawn that off on somebody. I don't want to do yearbook again next year as the principal, but it would be pretty fun to have a speech and debate, a current events class, creative writing classes, and those are all ones that were pretty hopeful that those are going to work out.
I'll do anatomy and physiology. We can
That up on the
CTE,
side.
we can CTE certify you, yeah, let's do it.
I have a question regarding the social studies and science approach for one semester versus 2 semesters. What's the thought process behind having everyday science for a semester and then switching to everyday social studies for a semester rather than toggling back and forth to A days you get social studies, and B days you get science?
Yeah, so that's just a sample schedule. If you're looking at the 8th grade one, half of our students at the 8th grade level will take social studies first semester. The other half of our 8th graders will take science first semester, and then second semester they switch. And so if I didn't take social studies first semester, I'm going to take social studies second semester. And so that's kind of the rationale behind that.
And is that better than doing year-long social studies and science, but on an every other day rotation, rather than this semester I don't get any social studies, I just get science and then flip-flopping? That was just, I don't know if there's science behind that versus not, or continuity in day after day you get the same subject. So just wanting to know what was considered there.
Yeah, so, and that's where it gets into be a contractual piece that we're not able to do. I like the consistency of having social studies and science for a full year. I think there's a lot of good that comes with that. Practically within a school day, if I'm a science teacher and I have students every other day for a full year, what my A days look like is I teach 4 of those 5 periods. I have at the top end 30 students in each of those classes. And so on A days, I see 120 students. I'm below that 180 optimum workload. And then on B days, I see a brand new set of students for 4 periods out of the 5 teaching periods, and I see 120 more new students. So if you add those both together, I think you get 240, and that's way above the 180 optimum workload, and not something that we were able to consider with kind of the piece within our CBA right now. And so that's why we didn't go science and social studies for a full year. It's not something that our bargaining agreement can support at this time.
I think there's some added argument, the developmental aspect of how many courses at one time should 6th graders take, right?
And the
For that
continuity
element.
to drop off
Yeah.
less when they continue the next. I
Yeah.
can see both sides.
Yeah.
I was just curious, but I mean, that makes sense. I just, at first I was like, oh, I wonder why it was that,
Yeah,
not the
and
other.
that was actually a rich part of the conversation
Okay.
with the teachers as well. So.
Perfect.
So am I missing something as far as the level of support from the main groups, the students, the teachers, and parents? I know there have been surveys talked about. What were the results of those?
Barrett, do you want to address some of the survey results that you received?
Sure. We did a parent survey a few weeks back as it was looking a little bit more and more like our staff was inching and moving toward an adoption of this schedule. There's nothing in our collective bargaining agreement that says that we need parent support, but I think you're probably on a suicide mission if you don't get any sort of feedback from your parents. And so there's a parent school schedule survey that had a few questions on it. There were 5 or 6 questions that asked, longer class periods. Do you on a 5-point scale? I strongly agree. I agree. I'm not sure about that. I disagree, and I strongly disagree with this statement. So those questions were longer class periods would provide more opportunities for students to engage in critical thinking and problem solving. Had a majority of our parents that said I strongly agree or agree with that. It was about 67% of our parents that said that. Another question was longer class periods would allow teachers to spend more time with individual students. And then again, the same 5-point scale there. It was a little over 70% that strongly agreed or agreed with that statement. A schedule where fewer classes are seen during a single day would allow for a safer school environment by reducing the number of times students spend in halls during transition. About a quarter of our parents said that I'm not totally sure on this, and those are probably the quarter percentage of our parents that haven't been in the hallways during passing period where there's just a lot of bodies, whether we're in hybrid or back in full-time. But the amount of parents that indicated a positive or I'm in agreement with that response was about 60%, with another quarter saying, I'm not sure about that. Question 4, a schedule where fewer classes are seen during a single day would allow for fewer homework assignments on a given night and allow for deeper understanding of each subject that students had that day. Again, about 60% of our families said I strongly agree, and about 20% of our families that said I'm not sure about that. Question number 5, a schedule or a focus on reading, writing, so language arts skills and math skills is important to my student success as we transition away from distance learning. The percentage of families that indicated a positive response to that was just under 70% to either strongly agreeing to that or not sure about that. And then our most divisive one, which is kind of what the pros and cons of this schedule, would you support increasing the amount of instruction in math and language arts at the sacrifice of a reduction of about 25% of the amount of time spent in butts and seats minutes in other subjects like science and social studies? And so that was the largest percentage of our strongly not in support, whereas about 25% of our families said, I am strongly not in support of that. Another 8% that said, I'm not in support of that. And so you have about 34% of our families that were not in support of that. And then those that were strongly in support of that, about 36%. Strongly in support or in support of that. So that was our most divisive one, where you saw a pretty even split between what families were saying. What makes me feel a little bit better about that, knowing that we have increased elective opportunities, and a lot of those that you see on your list are a focus around some of that backfilling with social studies and science if a student elects to be part of those classes.
I do want to point out, I think in the chat, former social studies teacher at South Middle School, Lois McMillan, pointing out that this would be, in her opinion, a much better approach. And so for somebody that has spent years teaching one of the subjects that is going to see a reduction in hours in support of this, I think is a key thing to note. And the chat only shows up for a second, but I did read it when she said that. Another teacher now? Yeah. Yeah. It will work better. Just wanted to point that out in case you missed it. 5, not 4 or 5.
And are the current teachers feeling that same depth of support for a revised schedule?
Can you repeat that?
I'll do it for you. Can you report on the staff engagement and support, both formally and informally, regarding this schedule change?
Yeah, I think, somebody else in the chat has said there's never been a better time for change. I think our teachers have experienced that this year, and they know that, especially coming out of this season of comprehensive distance learning and hybrid learning, there's no better time to make a change. Within our collective bargaining agreement, it calls for at least a 60% approval. If we had a 62% staff approval of moving to this schedule, as a building leader, I'm still kind of hesitant with like, oh boy, I know contractually we met what we're supposed to meet, but it still doesn't make me feel great knowing that about 40% of our staff are not excited, not on board with this. There's a little bit of trepidation moving forward, because a lot of our teachers have not taught in a 70-minute period. I'm pretty hopeful that with the professional development that we've done at the building level, with myself and with Mr. Lingo and with the addition of Ms. Reimer, that they're feeling confident that we're going to be able to support them in that transition. And our schedule vote came out to be, 36 voting members at South. 32 of those members voted, and 28. It was a 28-4 vote. 28 staff said, I want to move to this, and 4 said, just not ready for that yet.
Thank you. This isn't an action item, correct?
It's not. It's, the board hires me to administer the district and but also keeping the board very apprised, knowing that this has an impact on the community. So hence the presentation tonight. Yes, Gary.
Is Trish on?
Yes, Trish, you're on there somewhere, right?
Okay. Well,
I am. Hello?
good, good. So with our previous schedule, we had a lot of minutes for the band, and as we know, the band in District 7 is extremely productive, does well, regional competitions. And with the addition of this many minutes to math and language arts, I'm wondering if Trish is signing up to get 20% of our high school graduates at a 1,800 SAT in about 6 years.
I like your thinking, Mr. Richardson. Yes, we need to prioritize math and language arts, supporting kids and making sure that they're better prepared for high school so that that number can change as you're suggesting.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, Barrett, thank you. I know this has been a lot of work for you, and we appreciate your efforts. And we look forward to seeing the results and maybe making this transition throughout the district if it's successful. So we wish you well. All right, let's move on to 4.2, our superintendent's report. 4.2.1, strategic plan review process. So our evaluation process.
Yeah. So in your packet are 2 documents, and we have the strategic plan developed, and we know that this is a process. It's not just that this is what you do and this is what you do. And so constantly coming back, and so the proposal here is April present this process to you, but in May conduct district admin this year, a SWOT analysis on our 4 pillars and what that looks like, actionable right now in the district under each of those categories of SWOT: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And we plan to invite the board to be part of that discussion. I feel just in this first year that we will try to facilitate it internally. In future years, we may look at external experts on this work. Eventually, this will include our entire administrative team, but should, over time, the process should be inclusive of our district teachers and other staff, so that essentially the work happening in the buildings is reflected through the pillar work all the way up to what the big plan is for the district. So conducting that analysis and then identifying achievable objectives to update the strategic plan, continuing to refine data sources and artifacts of evidence to report to the board. Also in that process, May to June, identify and align resources. You recall from the most recent budget committee meeting, there was a strong attempt to take our budget and overlay with how they align with our priorities. So trying to be intentional about budgeting. And so by July, present a completed updated plan, baseline data, and then regular reviews during the school year and start the process over for the upcoming school year. So just creating the focus for the work, if anything, and build and improving the process over time. So, just a quick summary. Is there any thoughts or questions from the board?
I for one am very grateful. I think it's
think it's very important to have the board at the SWOT analysis with your administration so that we can be part of that conversation. And I would love to see it expand to your entire administrative team so that you do have buy-in from everyone when we talk about where are we going as a district. But I think this is a first step. I'm grateful for the outline on how it will happen and the reporting process. So we can continue to focus on this. So the next one is superintendent evaluation process and timelines. I attended an OSBA sponsored webinar. The webinar is available, the link to the recording as well as the slides presented in the recording, and really aligning with OSBA's recommended, and they've even updated and revised since we discussed last with the updated revision. So inclusive in the evaluation process are the 8 recognized performance standards. Superintendent evaluation will also include a review of the superintendent goals, self-evaluation, and evidence completed by the superintendent, and incorporating results of a targeted feedback survey. This is the big change. Recommended to be conducted by an independent third party. This is a service that OSBA is now offering and supporting boards in the best use of and how it would be associated with the superintendent evaluation. So encourage board members, if you want, I can have Tanya send you the links to the webinar slides and all tools as related.
Debbie and I were there.
Oh.
Yeah. I think we each got one half. Your powers combined, one full board member, one full.
So thank you for attending that. So timeline for the process is really very much aligns with what was presented. So in April, you're presenting an established timeline and process. April through June is where they say pre-evaluation, include reflection on the prior evaluation, the budgeting process and priority setting, this aligning with the development and analysis of the strategic plan and how the superintendent is doing as related. So that's a big part of my job. This is the work we do in the strategic plan. And so aligning that evaluation and process. June, determine superintendent goals based on prior evaluation and or align with the strategic plan. Determine, this is where the board issues the superintendent's contract for the following school year. And then formal check-ins with the board in executive sessions on the superintendent evaluation. In December, contact OSBA to conduct a targeted feedback survey. Tanya, we will want to reach out to them now and ask them when the best time to schedule that is with the board. It would be probably a bit of a work session with the board. January, OSBA to conduct a targeted feedback survey. February, provide the board with the results. Evaluation forms and self-reflection to be completed by the second board meeting of February. So beginning of February, provide the board with feedback results, self-evaluation, and any other information, and ask the board to complete those forms with the standards and such. And then March, present the board chair would combine all of the information from individual board members into a evaluation summary, and then by law, March 15th, notify the superintendent of the contract status. So just wanting to set up the formalities to the process and help the board get to a place of agreement. And so on what that process should look like. So I guess I entertain questions or concerns regarding the proposed outline.
It's collaborative, and I like
And it's independent.
it. And it's not, it's not too hot.
Gary?
It would appear that the tasks that are slated for April through June would be highly compressed. We generally don't have a second meeting in June. I mean, that's like we have.
Yeah, we do. June, because we adopt the budget at the second meeting. Or, is that right?
Let me refer to the calendar.
July. Second meeting in July.
Yeah, we'll either have one really big meeting in July, or we would need to transition to having 2 meetings in July. We typically have not, but that is a transition that we would need to be willing to make.
Yeah, I guess I'm just saying, we probably need something scheduled for both meetings in May to get this amount of work done by June.
Especially if not all of us are back in July. Just saying. Well,
Do we have a date for the SWOT analysis in May?
I'm working on scheduling those.
I think that seems to be a critical piece as far as the superintendent evaluation is the development and alignment of our strategic plan. So obviously, we can't, all of those things will need to be done, and then we will need to talk about the date.
because then if we turn around and present the updated plan, I assume based on that collaboration work in July, if back to the strategic plan process and timeline, the idea is probably start with the one, collaborate with the other. Once we've set on the other, then you go back and if you need to do one last pass over the strategic plan, that's when you do that final update.
Yeah, so really trying to align the two processes.
Well, I think looking forward to the future, we can see that there is a pathway forward to make this less clunky, and if it becomes kind of hardwired in, it happens smoothly. The budget aligns with the pillars. We have those discussions. The board and is able to have input on the direction or vision of where we hope the district goes, and then it's really just this year has been nothing of just putting things into motion, but then the motion is going forward, and it becomes a much more smooth process. I hope.
Yes, I agree.
All right. Great. Any other questions on that then? All right, let's go to 4.3, board reports and special concerns. Josephine County Educational Fund nominees. I received one email. Debbie was I think the only one, unless Casey had a chance to look through. We have $900. Okay.
I wanted to look through and I found out I couldn't, under the kaleidoscope plan she's using, it's too small for me. So I'm doing homework.
Well, I'm happy. So I don't know when the deadline is exactly. If we would like to have some more time, Cliff, if you want to look through them and email me, I'm happy to wait.
You know,
we can.
I'm not out from under the woods now. I just finished 30 hours of continuing education online to keep my real estate broker's license, and pretty tired. That's taken a long, about 2 months. And I'm creating scholarships for Rotary, and I'm already selected winners for the Performing Arts Scholarship. So I've got my hands full. I'm not complaining. I love it. I absolutely love reading the students' essays. We have such bright kids that we don't get the chance always to find that out unless we go hands-on. So no, don't hold back anything schedule-wise. We got to get it done. And most all the things we're talking about here to be done by the end of April, which is like a couple days now. And then May, it'll all happen.
And at the last meeting, we left it in board chair's hands to finish it out. Sam's input.
Sure. I appreciate your
Confidence.
discretion and power that was given to the board chair. Thank you. I'll ask for that at other opportune moments as well. What we have not decided is how much money would we like to give and how many of the students would we like to award. We have $900.
We have $1,370.
Wow.
And she needs, the final drop dead date is May 10th.
I will review, I'd like time to review and give some further input, so I can get you input by.
So would we like to have, we have about $1,300, $1,200. Would we like to have 6 $200 awards, 4 $300 awards, 12 $100 awards? What would we like to do as a board?
Past?
What?
What have we done in the past?
Well, this is hybrid, had a hybrid beginning. There's never been anything set in stone. So we just go with what we have and who we have,
What did we do last year?
and try to look at the top 10% of your GPA students and just work with that group and then see who's not receiving anything for whatever reason. Sometimes some kids deserve it, they do. And make provision, some money from the school board should go toward helping those who have not. So it doesn't have to be an elite group. But you just have to read the essays, find, and you'll see these kids are just so bright.
Okay, so I brought my notes.
All right.
Good job, Libby.
Go, Debbie.
And 6 kind of came up to the top for me. And so if we had 6 times 200, all of my 6 would get recognition. But my first thought is all of these kids are outstanding, and I would want some kind of recognition to somebody who hasn't had, any major kind of recognition first. So, but that's.
All right, so I'm gonna propose that we take the top 6, we'll give them each $200. Next year, hopefully we'll have addition of $5,000 into our account as the board goes through their 18 hours of service. And Brian goes through his 18 hours of dedicated service. And we will have more money to offer to the students next year. So Casey, I'll wait for you and you can.
I'll get it done by the end of the weekend.
And send it to me, your top 6, and we have Debbie's top 6, and anybody else would like to, if you can get it before the end of the week. If not, I will then, thank Gary, pick the top 6 and we will move on. And I will let Quinn Collins know that.
That's a board decision last meeting.
I wasn't here though, so we just wanted to give you my chance.
Trying to get everybody their chance. Okay,
I have something. I think that we've certainly learned trial by fire this year. And, our first thing with the community-based healthcare center was condoms, and now vaccines. I'm kind of concerned that we, as an education system, might be stepping in between parent and student. And wonder if that's a conversation or action that we want to talk about.
So I'm going to add a little bit to that because I've been doing more conversations this afternoon. What's being marketed is another community-based clinic available to anyone who signs up, sponsored by Josephine County Health and Siskiyou. Grants Pass High School, it just happens to be a site. If you recall, we were the original site considered for all of the vaccines in the community. And so this is just one more community-based vaccine, not sponsored by District 7. I was real clear.
Not sponsored, but offered during school.
Not during school.
Okay.
The clinic would be after school hours. People would need to sign up and check in.
Similar to the other vaccination events. I kind of went back and forth with that struggle too, Kathy.
Well, because that's the way it was originally presented to our parents in our community.
Yes, and we have, we're backing up of that. This is for clarification purposes. This is open to anyone in the community who is able
Not
to
during
click on-
school hours.
Not during school hours. That is
Do they
correct.
offer vaccinations in general during school hours?
Does Siskiyou?
Yes,
Yes, at their local clinic.
at our.
Not
clinic.
at not at our facility.
Thank you. Clarification is good.
We'll get that in a minute.
Can we get that in a minute? Can we also communicate that to our parent community?
Yeah, so we're working on that piece. I knew the board would want to have some discussion around that. This evening. It was brought to me that some board members may bring that up. So wanted that to happen before we do anything.
Excellent. I think that's good communication. Thank you.
So my comments related to that is that District 7 has, I guess you'd call it a reputation, moral voice in the community. And we have to be careful to protect that, especially in areas that could be interpreted by some as the district trying to come in between the parents and the children, which, because of the way certain laws in Oregon are written, allow those minor children to make choices that the parents might not agree with. So as a district, that's not a position we want to put ourselves in. So we just need to be really careful to protect the voice of District 7 when things like this come up, so there's not confusion.
Any other board reports or special concerns? Okay, thank you. We will move on to our action items. 5.1.1, Resolution 2021-12, Teacher Appreciation Week for May 3rd through 7th. I'm going to expect there will be no opposition to that. So why don't we take that action item first, and then we'll go on to state testing. We have a motion to approve our Teacher Appreciation Week from May 3rd through 7th.
This member Durbin so moved. A second. Member Wilkins.
Then moved and seconded. Do we have any further discussion?
Is this something we need read into the,
Yes, we historically read this into the record. All resolutions.
Since I moved it, I'm willing to read it, if that's what we need to.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Resolution number
do we need to vote on it? Please?
Yeah, I think the board can vote on it and then run it into the resolution.
I'll read it twice.
Yeah, it's already been publicly out there, so
Okay.
everybody's seen it.
So we have a roll call vote, please.
Member Delagreen,
Yes.
member Dermott,
Yes.
member Brownell,
Yes.
member Nelson.
Yes.
Member Coolman.
Yes.
Member Wilkins,
Yes.
member Richardson.
Yes.
Member Durbin, will you please read the resolution
Happy
into
to.
our minutes?
Resolution number 2012-12. Whereas teachers mold future citizens through guidance and education, and whereas teachers encounter students of widely differing backgrounds, and whereas our country's future depends on providing quality education to all students, and whereas teachers spend countless hours preparing lessons, evaluating progress, counseling and coaching students, and performing community service, and whereas our community recognizes and supports its teachers in educating the children of this community, and whereas teachers have demonstrated tremendous creativity, flexibility, and dedication during the COVID-19 pandemic and continue to provide instruction through distance learning. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Grants Pass School District Number 7 Board of Directors proclaims May 3rd through the 7th, 2021 to be Teacher Appreciation Week. And be it further resolved that the Grants Pass School District Number 7 Board of Directors strongly encourages all members of our community to join with it and personally express appreciation to our teachers for their dedication and devotion to their work. Come on, stand up.
All right, 5.1.2, Resolution 2021-13, State Testing.
Yeah, so I bring this proposed resolution to the board after much contemplation, observation, and input from our administrative team, the voice of teachers, and clarification with the Oregon Department of Education of what this means in terms of impacting the district. If you're not aware, Portland Public, Salem Kaiser, Ashland, Eagle Point, and several others, and the entire state of Washington Superintendent of Public Instruction have all taken this position to provide state assessments only if families want to opt in. Currently, the expectation by ODE, who they themselves applied for a full waiver to opt out, and the feds are not granting those waivers. They are giving a modified waiver that it would be a limited range of assessments at different grade levels. For example, 3rd grade would be reading, 4th grade would be math, 5th grade would be science, and so only one assessment per grade level. That's the modified proposal that was approved by the feds for the state. So this is an option for us. What it does mean is that we will check the box. That means we do not meet Division 22 standards for this school year. The remedy for that is administering assessments next year, saying we're going to fix that. So you're obligated to say, I didn't meet it, but here's how I'm going to fix that. And that was communicated directly from Oregon Department of Education. And so looking at the amount of time it takes to administer those assessments and the valuable learning time that will consume, it is my strong recommendation that the board approve this resolution, and it is here for your consideration at this time.
I'll move it, but I don't want to read it.
I would be willing to read it into the board.
Nancy moved it. All right, so we have a motion.
I'll second the motion.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Gary?
Well, we asked for a waiver, the state did. We didn't get granted the waiver. But apparently we just decided we're not going to do it. That doesn't seem to be the way we normally operate. I guess if we're going to take this position now, are there other things in the future that have been mandated by higher level government authorities that we're going to say, yeah, we hear you said that, but we're not going to do it. That seems like the wrong road to go down. So I have a problem with, even if I don't like it, not following essentially the laws that we're supposed to follow. So that's my problem with this resolution.
Is it a law?
Mandates.
Some kind of way the Fed say, we asked for a waiver, they said no.
So it is a federal expectation on the states that they are conducting these standardized formal assessments on an annual basis as part of whatever the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. And so every state in the nation has requested this waiver. They have not granted any full waivers, but are granting these modified waivers. Washington, ironically enough, Washington, D.C. public schools are taking the same approach. Much of the Northeast is. And so it's the rationale of why under these COVID times and the valuable learning time that we will give up hours, multiple hours per assessment to gather data that we do not make instructional decisions on. We don't use state assessment data. We use ongoing formative assessment data. We can come back to the board with some of that data at our multiple levels to report on. And so we're just asking for this consideration for this school year under the current circumstances.
Well, it is part of the resolution that we kind of agree with. It says the state test results do not provide data or information that individual teachers can use to inform their instruction or identify areas for remediation among their students. And I pretty much agree with that all the time. They're always changing their standards and their test data is pretty much worthless. So I'm all for opting out all the time if you want to.
I think.
We're coming from the guy who just said we should never,
Yeah.
we should never flout the rules.
If we're gonna go this way, fine, let's just do it all the time.
I think
It's just looking at what the consequences are, doing it all the time.
exactly. So I think my two counters to Gary's, I know this isn't how we've normally done it, but COVID's not how anything's normally been ever. And so I think we have to be willing to look at options. And if the consequences of not doing the assessments was you weren't going to get funded next year, I don't think anybody at this table would be talking about that. But if we have a remedy at our disposal to get us back on track, and I feel even though I partially wanted to see the data just because I wanted to see how far off from previous years it would be to give us some idea, another data point. But I think we're going to get that in the following state assessment and other assessments that we're going to do. So
I'm not, I disagree with, well, it's weird. You said both things. You said you agree with it, and you disagree with it. So
Well, I said, if you're gonna go that path, then what I heard you say is it's okay for us to skip the state every other year.
basically, yes.
Because
Well,
we
that's
can
on
always
record.
make it up the following year. We say half our test.
All right, well, is there any more comments with regards to the motion?
And so this is a modified. First was a full waiver, now we're asking for partial
So
waiver.
the state requested with the Fed a full waiver, and they said no, but we will entertain modified waivers. And so then the state proposed this modified to the extent they could get us out of as much testing as possible, and it was approved. And hence, that's the expectations by the state. And so this proposal right here says, we're not even gonna do that. And we understand the consequences are and the remedies to those consequences. And so, so yeah, does that make sense?
Okay, so Oregon received a modified waiver, but this resolution says we're not going to follow that.
Correct.
And what again are the consequences?
The consequences are that we would not be able to check one of the boxes of the Division 22 standards. It's the assurances that you as a board provide to the state that said Grants Pass School District is meeting all of these requirements in their current education. And one of them is administering state assessments. That's federally mandated for the state to receive federal funds flowed through to the school districts. So the remedy to not being able to check that box, we have to provide an explanatory statement of why we didn't. And then what is your remedy for the next school year? And our remedy for the next school year, and this is quoted from an email directly from Oregon Department of Ed, your remedy would be you're going to administer the assessments next school year. And so we would basically be administering state assessments next spring as our remedy to not meeting the standards.
And these are like all-day tests, basically.
They consume several hours, so there's test prep, which consumes several hours of instructional time, and then there's actually taking the test. So when teachers have to give the assessment, it isn't just one day we're going to walk into a lab and take the assessment. It's I'm preparing my kids on best strategies to take the assessment. You know, make sure you eat, drink, and sleep well, and we're going to do these activities in class that essentially disrupt the instructional time just to prepare for the test. And then there's the time it takes to coordinate and administer the assessments.
And the comparative data points that we are not going to provide include.
So at every grade level, we will be losing at least 1 or 2 data points. So at 3rd grade, they would be taking the reading, but we wouldn't get their math data points. At 4th grade, they wouldn't take the reading, but we would be getting their math data points. At 5th grade, we would be getting their science data points, but not reading and math. So the inconsistencies at grade level and the types of data you get, and again, remember this data does not inform the design of our instruction, intervention, or assessment of students.
Just a comparative.
A year-by-year comparative of an assessment that is supposed to be based on the standards.
If this goes through and we essentially agree to not do it, parents could say, I want to opt my kid into the state assessment, correct?
That is correct. It's basically going from an opt-out to an opt-in.
Because currently it's an opt-out. Parents could just say, please leave my kid
That is correct.
out of, so if all parents say, I want my kids opted out this year, we could still check the box on standard 22 because we attempted to supply mandated tests.
No.
or the state system.
No.
Just looking for a loophole.
We just need one kid to take it, and
And
the rest
then
of them
counts.
opt out.
We can check the box.
So it's been moved and seconded. We've had a discussion. Is there any more comments? Then we will entertain a roll call vote, please.
Member Grange,
Yes.
Member Durbin? Yes. Member Brownell? Yes. Richard Nelson?
Yes.
Member Coolman?
Aye.
Member Wilkins? Yes. Member Richardson?
No.
You put a smirk in there.
You can see it right through the minutes.
All right, thank you. The resolution passes. So 6.0, our next meetings, our budget committee meeting will be held on Thursday, May 6th at 5 p.m. I believe this one will be a Zoom meeting, if I remember correctly.
Yep.
And then our board meetings on May 11th and May 25th, all at 5 o'clock. So, with that, we will adjourn our regular session. Thank you very much for your attendance. We will open up our executive session here in 5 minutes.
Thanks. I did Nancy Hunter for this also. Yeah, I was able to.
Yay.
She said she's in the middle of bargaining somewhere, but she can carve out 15 minutes
Perfect.
to join, and I'm texting her when we start.
Thank you.
Ideally.
Welcome everyone back. We have 2 items on our agenda. The first item would be 10.1.1. We will entertain a motion to approve the everyday 6 through 12 MOU.
Member DeLaGrange, so moved.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Do we have any further discussion? Tanya, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Member DeLaGrange?
Yes.
Member Durbin?
Yes.
Member Brownell?
Yes.
Board Chair Nelson?
Yes.
Member Coolman?
Yes.
Member Wilkins?
Yes.
Member Richardson?
Yes.
Thank you. That motion is approved. Our next item is 10.2, approval of first and final reading of revised policies and ARs, 10.2.1 GBG, staff participation in public activities. We have a motion to approve.
We're going to have the motion on the floor. I'm going to amend it.
Member DeLaGrange, so moved.
Thank you. It's been moved. Do we have a second?
Member Durbin, second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Do we have any further discussion?
So there's a couple points about the policy that I'd like to change, and after a little discussion, we'll offer an amendment to the policy. In particular, the second to last paragraph where it discusses, it starts out with saying what district employee rights are, but transitions to controversial subjects in the course of their duty. And the last sentence says, on all controversial issues, employees must designate that the viewpoints they represent on the issues are personal viewpoints and are not to be interpreted as the district's official viewpoint. And so I'm struggling with that particular sentence. It kind of feels like it lets the teachers say, this is not the district's viewpoint, this is my viewpoint, and say
Therefore I
what
can
they're
say
gonna
it.
say.
Therefore I can say it.
And as a district, this board member's opinion is that the teachers should be drawing the viewpoints out of the students and essentially letting them work the logic through as to whether their position is consistent or valid, and comparing the viewpoints to each other rather than picking the viewpoint and saying, this isn't the district viewpoint, but then going at it, because again, that's an unequal relationship between the teacher and the student.
There is policy, I believe it's IBN, that is regarding instruction on controversial issues. I think I sent that to you earlier today. Am I correct? IBN, and it does require the teacher to present information without bias and represent both sides of controversial issues. But that one is very much focused on instruction, not
Well, so
necessarily.
then maybe we don't even,
I was gonna say, if we have a policy on that, then can we just strike that sentence from this policy, since there is a policy on it already?
Superintendent Cole, just for reference, it's Board Policy INB, studying controversial issues.
yeah, I think I'd just strike that sentence and then let INB be our policy related to how the teacher is supposed to handle that in a classroom. Okay.
Yeah, if this is what was in in your current policy, and this is the USBA policy, but, you know, I don't.
But if we have a policy speaking to that issue in and of itself, does it require redundancy in both policies?
What I actually think this is intended to apply isn't the classroom part of it. I think it's even, you know, speech out in public. You know, if you're making that speech, if it's a controversial issue, the employee can't say, I'm, you know, I work for the district, I'm a teacher with the district, and this is what I believe. I think that's what it's actually intended to. I think it's, and you can certainly clarify that, but I think that's what the intent of that sentence is.
Well, then we should just change it to say that, because given the sentences prior that's talking about classroom and instruction and stuff, it's not clear that that would be the intent.
So just take out the except, because the except portion of that second half of that sentence is basically referring to the other policy, but we can, that last sentence would still apply as part of these separate activities that were not called out in the other policy.
You could just say it except is delineated in policy INB or something like that. But that still doesn't address the issue that Bill just brought up, which is they're on their own time. They have all their free speech rights, but they're wearing their District 7 shirt and they just decide to go off. What we're saying is, if you do that, you have to designate that that's your personal one, which is not hard to do. Pretty much every conversation I start is, I am not the school board, just an individual person discussing this issue with you. So.
Personal, not professional.
I like referring to the other policy to.
Except that I'm looking it up, we're saying it's IMB?
INB is in boy.
N.
N.
Thank you.
Nancy.
Yeah, INB, correct.
Yes.
IMDb.
So Bill, would it be able to say on all within the classroom, please refer to INB, and then outside of
For everything else.
Your employment or outside of time at the school? I don't know the wording for that, but just to say on all controversial issues outside of school.
Off duty.
Yeah.
So earlier we were talking about within the scope of employment or, you know.
I think for that sentence in particular, it can't just be, and I think as I read it, I thought in a classroom, a teacher stands up and says, this is not how the district views things, but I'm going to tell you how I feel. And you're saying this is outside of being at school. And so we just need to delineate that.
Yeah, and I'm kind of making that assumption because that makes the most logical sense to me based on how the policy, I think, is supposed to function, but you're right, it could be clearer for sure.
So I think just to add something of that nature to clarify what that means, I think would be very helpful for the policy. And then as far as teaching goes, we can refer back to I and B.
Maybe just at the beginning of that last sentence, when engaged in activities while off duty on all controversial issues, employees must.
Yeah.
Okay, Gary? Any other points?
No.
Was there going to be a consideration of amending the definition of political or civil issue?
Replacing notwithstanding the foregoing sentence with in determining whether a civil issue is controversial, the district shall consider whether the speech is consistent with district policies and resolutions.
And then you'll want that in the minutes, I mean, all of those. So.
No, listen to the tape.
Listen to the tape, okay.
So you want me to try and do that in the form of an amendment?
Yeah, I was thinking about Robert's rules, and Bill, you might know better. If they withdraw theirs and there's just a proposal to approve this policy with these amendments. And so, because they have essentially first and seconded to approve this as it is.
So you can, you move to amend the motion on the floor. After the motion to amend is seconded.
This is just a Robert's rules question.
We can withdraw. Yeah, you have to move to amend the motion, and then it needs a second, and we have to vote that, and then we bring it back.
Let's do that, that sounds fun.
All right, so Gary, would you like to put a motion out there to amend?
You just say as discussed.
I move that we amend the motion on the floor to change the wording of policy GBG and strike the sentence, notwithstanding the foregoing, no civil issue shall be considered controversial if the district has an acknowledged policy or resolution and the speech is consistent with the policy or resolution. Replace it with, in determining whether a civil issue is controversial, the district shall consider whether the speech is consistent with district policies and resolutions. In addition, I'm not sure how to identify the spot. In the proposed resolution or proposed policy on the floor, where the wording says except in open, and in open is stricken. Change, starting there with the word except, add the words as described in
Policy IB.
And remove the rest of the sentence to the period where it says political or civil issues. And on the last sentence of that paragraph, add the words when engaged off-duty.
In off-duty activities, when engaged in off-duty activities.
When engaged in off-duty activities on all controversial issues, employees must designate.
Employees must designate what? And continue on.
Whatever.
The
You
rest
can
of
use
the
that at
sentence.
the beginning of that sentence to keep everything in it. We can debrief tomorrow.
Gotta love tape.
Okay, so that motion has been put on the floor. We have a second.
Member DeLaGrange, second.
Any further discussion?
We have a question in the chat regarding this resolution or this policy.
Don, do we have a question?
There is a question in the chat. Hasn't the board already stipulated matters involving staff, quote, behavior, unquote, related to these issues? Curious, why is this up again? So I think they're asking for context.
The context is we're changing the policy and we're just trying to make it as clear as possible.
It hasn't been updated in quite some time, Chris.
The last update of this board policy was in 2004. It was originally adopted in 1988. So it
It's
is,
time.
it is a need to revise our policy GDG.
Times have changed.
Okay, so you're welcome, Jay Andrews. All right, so the motion has been moved and seconded. No further discussion is noted. We will ask for a roll call vote, please, Tanya.
Member De La Grange,
Yes.
Member Durbin,
Yes.
Member Brownell,
Yes.
Board Chair Nelson,
Yes.
Member Coleman,
Abstain.
Member Richardson,
Yes.
Member Wilkins.
Yeah.
Okay, the motion carries, 6 votes in the affirmative, 1 abstention. I believe that concludes our meeting for this evening.
Now, don't you have to
So,
vote on the motion?
Was that just a amendment and now we have to still pass it?
And a vote is taken on the amended motion. So then,
okay, so we would like to we have to approve it again?
All we
this
did
requires a
then
second after the motion.
was allow the motion to be amended.
Is needed to
Now
decide.
we have to approve.
I will entertain a motion to approve.
No, we
I
already
think
have
we
it.
just have to do the vote.
Okay,
So, right, that was to accept the amendment.
Right.
Now this makes it the actual motion.
Now we're voting on the
It's
policy.
replaced the original motion now.
I see.
so I make, we have a roll call vote on the policy.
Member De La Grange,
Yes.
Member Durbin.
Yes.
Member Brownell,
Yes.
Board Chair Nelson,
Yes?
Member Coleman,
Abstain.
Member Wilkins.
Yes.
Member Richardson.
Yes.
Thank you. Now I believe that passes the policy GPG.
Done.
AC tells me that it's passed, that we're good. All right, we will conclude our meeting.
You're done before.
And it's not even 8 o'clock yet. All right, thank you, everyone.
Good night, everybody. Thank you. Out there in
We
Zoom
were
land.
super close, you're right.